Hi, thanks for joining us today. This is the Freeman Conversations. I'm Jobert Ocao, the online editor of the Freeman, and our guests today will help us answer the question why it is important for the public to understand how journalists and the media works. And also, this conversation is just one of a series of conversations we have prepared for you as Cebu once again celebrates Press Freedom Week next week from September 17 to 23. And to introduce our guests today, of course, if I may begin with a lady. Our guest from Southwestern University, Freeman, is its marketing supervisor, and for quite some time she also practiced public relations before she joined Southwestern University. We have Precious Herradura. Thanks for joining us. And of course, to the right is a very familiar face that everyone has been looking for. He practically does not need any introduction to Cebuanas, but of course, we would like to welcome to the Freeman and to the Freeman Conversations, Mr. Rico Lucena. He has been a journalist for quite some time. In fact, the very first time I met Rico was in Dumaguete City when he was assigned in ABS-CBN in Dumaguete City, and eventually he practiced journalism in Cebu and also taught journalism at the University of San Jose Recoletos. Rico, thank you for giving us this time.
Pleasure.
Okay, so the very first question would like to ask them to answer is, why is it important for the public today to understand how media and the journalists work?
Because generally we are the product of media. This is the generation where we could actually say that the way that we dress up, the way we talk, the way we embrace life as a whole is actually a product of media. So it's innate, supposedly, in each of us, and it is something that you cannot defy from. So the best way is for you to understand what is the role of media to your life, in as much as what is your role to the media world as well. Mm-hmm. Because generally, Jobert, we are working, we are living with media every single day of our lives.
Every single day. Yes. When we were starting our careers in journalism, there was television, radio, and print, but now social media has changed. The internet has changed the landscape.
Exactly.
In which media works.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
In the Philippines setting, for example, in the year 2000, there are only about 5 million Filipinos being penetrated with internet. Right. But as of last year, in 2016, according to a study of a Singapore-based research company, out of 100 million population in the Philippines, about 60% is being penetrated by internet. Mm-hmm. And mind you, of that 100 million, about 120 million mobile phones are in the Philippines. Yeah. Like I have 2, Mom perhaps 2, you might have 3. So you can just imagine how powerful social media is working in our country, and we're very much exposed to it. And this is the reason why it is inevitable for us not to actually go with the bandwagon of social media and be aware of its impact to each and every one of us.
Precious, your thoughts?
Well, we were able to impeach a president through media. We were able to elect a president through media. Mm-hmm. And even through social media, people now have more voices to be able to air out their concerns. Unlike before, where you have to be prominent in the society to be able to have a news column, to be able to be heard. Now through social media, you can talk about a policeman who helped a lady at the sidewalk. So it's really very important for everyone to be aware why the media is there, how this can affect them, and also how to filter the media, what is right, what is wrong, who is there just for popularity, who is there to just spread fake news. So that's really very important nowadays.
Precious might be in the marketing side or PR side of things at this point in time, but she actually is a graduate of mass communication. We come from the same school, Siliban University in Dumaguete City, so she also has a stake on the conversation. As you have mentioned earlier, both of you, social media has really impacted a lot in the way not only journalists and the way we do things in media, but also the relationship between journalists and the public. So, how do you see this relationship going?
Well, so far with regards to the consumers and the producers, this one is quite critical in a sense because there are a lot of fake news going on.
Yeah.
And I just could recall those days in which the general public would depend on legitimate institutions, so
mainstream media,
in terms of real information. But today, it is quite distraughting to realize that there are really those people who would believe on fake news than the mainstream media. And they would even think that the mainstream media are the ones faking the news. So that's how painful it is in this time of age. But then I just would like to emphasize that the truth will always prevail. Whatever is there in terms of whether it's fake news or whatever, at the end of the day, you would always seek for what is the truth. And definitely, we in the mainstream media are advocating the truth in terms of getting the right information, giving it to people.
Precious Southwestern University is giving an emphasis on media education and media literacy with, I think it's a subject required in senior high. And there are also programs that we will be offering come 2018 in Southwestern. Why is this important to the university?
Well, for our students, what we want them to do is to solve real life problems. So we don't want them to answer theories in classrooms or to figure out problems that are only in books. So what we do now is that we do active learning. This is already practiced from senior high school up to college in our existing programs. But it's very special in senior high school because at this time, teachers only discuss for around 20 to 30 minutes. So this is the time when teachers do the lecture, what we're all exposed to in traditional classroom orientation. After those 30 minutes, teachers just become facilitators where they facilitate learning in their students through solving and analyzing real-life problems. So these are different sets of problems, and we do this through learning by doing. So students will be able to learn by doing it, and also, of course, they'll be able to practice critical thinking as early as senior high school. So it's very important because we want our graduates to be able to solve real problems in society. So as early as they are in school right now, we want them to practice solving these problems.
And as we have also pointed out in classrooms or in conversations among journalists and the public, critical thinking is a very important component when you use, for example, social media. You mentioned fake news. So that's also one thing that you need your students to develop while in school. If you might have been asking why Rico has left the mainstream media, he did not left journalism as a whole because now he's leading initiatives to educate the young when it comes to media and how journalism works. Rico, tell us about your projects. And he is now the managing partner of Communication Arts Training Group.
Yeah, actually, we in ComArts, we started about 7 years ago, and our trainings were more focused on teachers. But then eventually we realized that communication arts, communication being our reason for being, we need to emphasize really on the impact of media, especially to the young. So every single year, we advocate specific trainings in different division offices of Dep Ed, whether private or public, to inform them of the new trends in media and somehow even to inform them specifically what are the roles. Because today, the young, they're so exposed to the gadgets, exposed to they have access to media. But then in terms of screening the information, weighing things, choosing what is right to what is wrong, is something critical. And it is something that you cannot dictate upon them, but it is something that they need to develop along the way. So for the past so many years, we've been doing trainings in different schools and different division offices through ComArts. And we invite guests from the mainstream media who will discuss specific topics based on their specific
expertise,
core of competence.
Okay. Yeah. What are these topics?
Journalism, generally on news writing, feature writing, news feature, editorial, cartooning, broadcast, TV, radio, practically all of those that are part of the press con that they have that they're conducting every single year in Dep Ed.
They're saying that the internet or social media will render mainstream media obsolete in the next 10 years or so. So if that is going to, do you believe in that? And if that's going to be the case, why is it important for students to understand and know how to write the news, deliver the news using mainstream media?
Because actually, if you were to think about it, the mainstream media has been there for ages, despite the trials in terms of the freedom of expression or the kind of government that particular country is having. Media would always persist and would always insist to be there. And I believe that despite the rampant usage of social media, the mainstream media that we're having now, intra-media, which is radio, TV, and print, would really exist. The best way is for you to evolve. Like, there are so many newspapers and magazines in the US that there were projections before that most likely they will close up, they will close down. They call them the sunset, the print media as the sunset industry.
And hundreds of them actually closed down.
Exactly, but then there are a lot of those who actually still exist, and they're so successful because they joined the bandwagon of social media. And social media is the new media. This is the in thing. So the best way for you is to really get on it, and then the very fact that you're a member of Facebook, the biggest country in the world today,
Right.
with more than 2 billion population. So you are in it already, and try to grab that, try to celebrate that in a sense that you must be more responsible of that specific power that is in your hand.
For the longest time, the Freeman has always been print, and now we're live.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, so it's part of the evolution.
Precious, as a public relations practitioner, as a marketing practitioner, I'm sure that the way your message gets distributed or shared is very important. So what do you think is the role of mainstream now? Does it still play a role in you channeling your message to the public, or are you more inclined toward using purely internet or social media in your initiatives?
What I like about the internet and the social media is it actually challenges our mainstream media to do better and to step up their game.
Why is that?
Well, of course we're all threatened. I mean, Sir mentioned about the projections about newspapers closing up, and these kinds of threats encourages the mainstream media to come up
Be on their toes.
with things
Or
like
to
this
move out
one.
from the box.
Yes, and that's really nice. For us, we still acknowledge the fact that newspapers, TV, and radio are still trusted source of communication. We use social media a lot. We use it a lot. We use it to, of course, reach a lot of our students, especially those who are abroad. But we still acknowledge the importance of these mainstream media. We see to it that every time there's something important, to make it legit, it has to be in the mainstream media, not just on social media.
Why?
So it's still associated with being trusted.
Okay.
And as a mass comm graduate, I agree, because newspapers just don't come out with something that's not edited, that's not checked, that's not filtered by a number of people, and by people who have been in the industry for the longest time. So I think even if a lot of people are on social media already sharing countless of stuff, there is still a good number who would still check on the mainstream and the trusted websites, the trusted newspapers, for them to believe that it is the truth.
That includes Southwestern.
And that includes Southwestern.
Okay. Before we go to the next question, because people have been asking, why did you leave mainstream media, Rico? You've been the constant face of ABS-CBN Cebu and its morning program, Ang Buntag Ka Pamilya, and all of a sudden you disappeared. Where did you go? And what have you been doing?
Actually, I really thought that I had informed the public already about it. But a lot of people are still asking, like, what happened and etc. Well, for the record, I left ABS-CBN in good faith, and somehow it was a choice between two good things. Number one, it was a choice between going to the US and staying in ABS. Going to the US because my petition for immigrant on that particular year in 2014 was being approved. And it was my second time to actually being offered that particular thing. The first time was when I was in high school, and then I never used it. That's the reason why I only stayed there for 7 months. And then the government, the US government actually get it from me. So my mom repetitioned me, and it was being approved in 2014.
Okay.
So it was a choice between staying in ABS and going to the US. So I went to the US to fulfill my mom's dream for me to have a green card, and so I did everything in the US. But then I still love the Philippines. I still love the lifestyle in here. So there was a choice for me at that time. My cousin, distant cousin, happens to be a immigrant lawyer, told me that you have actually another way for you to prolong your stay in the US, and that is to apply for re-entry permit. So I applied for re-entry permit that would allow me 2 years to stay in the Philippines. But then I don't want ABS-CBN to keep on waiting on my comeback whatsoever. So the best way for me is to resign. But when about to tender my resignation, I received a call from the big boss in Manilande, and she told me, "You're actually qualified to submit your special retirement package thing." So that's the reason why I had my early retirement in ABS-CBN.
So it was actually an early retirement.
Early retirement.
Do you miss waking people up in the morning?
Yeah, because 10 years is 10 years in my Buntag Pamilya. And every single day is a different day in terms of the news, in terms of information that you give to people, and the interaction as well right after the show. So I actually miss it. And well, I have to be open about it that ABS-CBN is still very much open in terms of me going
having you back.
Yes, but then as of now, it would be unfair because I'll be required to go back to the US because my expire na akong re-entry permit next year. So
you have to be
early next so
yeah.
I really have to go back to the US. So it would be unfair again for ABS to leave them after 6 or 3 months.
Right.
So there are decisions in life that are quite hard to choose from. Especially these are two good things.
I think the young people now call that adulting. Hashtag adulting. When you engage in that, you have to make very tough decisions. Well, the three of us belong to a generation that really saw how technology in the Philippines transition. When we were in college, I'd like to believe, I only had a 5110 phone in college. And
same thing with me.
Right.
5110, di ba?
5110. And Precious is a little bit younger, but she's still part of the generation. And we also saw how technology evolved, how social media came into our lives. When we were in college, internet was still trying to establish itself in the Philippines and in journalism and media. Did you miss those times when there was no internet and social media? And what are the benefits, the pros and cons of having social media and internet?
We become very much dependent. I guess that's the disadvantage, unless an advantage somehow. The most important and significant disadvantage of internet is our social contact. We lack that physical contact already with people. And that's the reason why our generation, nata in between the technology and no technology, we would always appreciate to go back to those times when we would converse with our friends face to face. Because lahi talaga siya, it's totally different. And that's one thing I totally miss this time. That's why I would still love to go out with friends, cook, have coffee, whatsoever, dinner, whatsoever, because totally different.
Cell phones off when you get.
That's the irony of it, because when you're with these friends, you cannot just simply turn off your phone. Well, the fact that you're there physically is really good enough, but then turning off the phone is another thing.
We're all
like it's a sacrifice already.
Correct.
I loved using the library when I was in college.
Yeah.
We're required to read the newspaper every day, as we have daily news quizzes.
The physical catalog.
The physical one.
Yes.
We always borrow it from the library. Now it's so easy. Even phones have built-in features where you have your own newspaper. It filters all of the news, and the most relevant ones for you is just right there.
Yeah.
So it's really different. I miss it when you tell people that you're supposed to meet up at a certain time, they show up. Unlike now, because there's social media, it's so easy to communicate. Someone can just say, "Oh, I'm still coming." Before, when you say you meet up at 7 at a certain location, you have to be there. Because there's no way of contacting that person. The person will wait there forever. So it's really different with social media. I I remember still going to the internet cafe to research something or to play games in their computer.
I remember going to the internet cafe and logging on to eudoramail.com. and hotmail.com.
Yeah.
I would print song lyrics in internet cafes. It was really different. You watch a 7 p.m. news to get information. You don't really rely on the internet to get information, and it's not really that updated before. Unlike now, where there are live Twitter updates on what's going on. Hashtag at the moment, 8 p.m. Diba? During our time, you have to wait when the newspapers come out. What's showing in the cinema will all be in the newspapers. The TV will have everything that you need to know. For something that's at the moment, you listen to the radio and stuff like that. So it's really different now. Pros is, of course, we're all connected. It's so easy to reach a relative abroad. It's so easy to talk. I remember my uncle would only call us at a certain time at this phone. We lived in the Bukid. So we really have to follow the schedule when he's about to call and place this phone somewhere so that he can call. And you follow that schedule all the time. Now everyone's on Facebook.
And before it was more expensive.
And super expensive. So you really have to value the time that you have when you talk over the phone. And now, you don't even have to pay anymore. Just have to pay for your internet and do Facebook calls, Facebook videos, and they just tag you in your photos. You don't need to talk anymore even.
Right. I remember the veteran journalist Verdel Santos saying that in the past, even if you saw a boxing match, you will still read the newspaper the following day to make sure that what you actually saw the day before was real. That was the relevance of mainstream media in the past. So, what people are now saying that anyone can be a reporter, anyone can be a journalist because anyone can have access to technology and social media in particular. What are your thoughts on that?
It's quite an insult in our part because
you've been a journalist for at least
16 years. 16 years, and it's my first job and the only job that I know of. So it's a big insult in our part when people would say anyone can just be a journalist as long as you have the gadget, you capture photos, you send it in social media, and then you give all the information. Because first and foremost, we studied mass comm. With due respect to others as well who are actually into media, yet they're not into mass comm. But then all of us underwent a series of trainings, all the trials, all the kasama in the newsroom, all the editing, all the tanan, everything. For us to become a reporter and for you to actually go to the field, gather the news yourself, and it's a more than a profession. It is a calling that is so sacred in my part that I don't want anyone to just simply claim that they can easily be a reporter just like that.
Precious, you studied for years.
Yeah, I highest respect for reporters. I of course had required internship at print and then it's different because it doesn't mean that you can write. You can have it published right away. You have to go through countless times to check if your information is correct.
Vetting.
You go through your source again and again and again just to make sure it's correct. And then your editor asks you the same question.
You argue with your editor?
You sometimes argue with your editor. Although when I was still an intern, I'm not allowed to argue with my editor. And of course, your editor went through this same process. So they have the right to actually argue with you on the kind of angle and the kind of information that they print. So it's really different. Having a Facebook account, having a Twitter account, it's nice because we're able to share what is happening around us. That's also nice because we now have a lot of witnesses wherever because everyone has a smartphone. Yeah. But it's unfair to say that anyone can just be a media or anyone can just be a journalist because this is a profession. They go through a lot of things to be able to be trained and stuff like that. So it's really unfair to say that everyone can just be journalists.
One of the most important contributions of the internet and social media is the democratization of the way people engage in the public sphere. So now anyone can participate in conversations. So if you want to participate in the conversation, please post your comments. Or if you have questions to ask to our guests, please do so. So speaking of that, what do you think, what is your best advice? What is the relevance of journalists in today's world, in today's internet generation?
For me, more than anything else, you are the storyteller. Never forget that your vocation is actually a storyteller. And once you're a storyteller, you are there to tell the truth, all sides of the story. I cannot say that media people are fair. Media people are biased. But make sure that your personal biases will not be shown to people, or that they will never feel it. Because no matter what, we have our own personal biases in terms of the way we're being brought up, the way we're being educated, the way we're being exposed to people and to friends. All of these things will somehow be incorporated to the way you write and you tell stories. Just make sure that your stories are really something that any one of these people watching you or reading your stories cannot feel that you have your personal bias in it. And that's one, being a storyteller. Number two is you're the source of truth. If there is one person that they can depend on, it's really you. And I would like to go back to the days when people will always tell me, like, thank you so much, Rico, regarding the price, the real price of sardinas and whatsoever because of your report. Or thank you so much as to the safety procedure whatsoever that we're going to do because of the fire thing that you reported yesterday. So these are the things that would make me realize somehow that more than the financial, reward of being a journalist, this is it. This is the most important thing. When people give their feedback to you, that they learn something out of the news items or the stories that you tell them.
And they appreciate your work.
Yes, yeah. Not personally me, but my work, my output.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think while the media will not tell everyone how to think, they actually influence people what to think about. So that's very important. And I agree with sir. We all have our personal biases. Like for example, in even just covering a topic.
Yeah.
A topic that you're more passionate about compared to the other one. So of course you'd cover the topic that you're more passionate about. And that's fine. Right? So you may not
Please don't give me business beats.
So you may prefer not to cover business, and that's already a personal
Exactly.
bias.
Okay.
But it's very important that people understand that that's normal. As long as it's always the truth. What's very important is the truth. You don't add, you don't subtract. This is it. That's very important, and it's for journalists. It's also very important to think again that while we don't tell people how to think, we tell them what to think about.
I think that's what they say in journalism jargon. There's no such thing as objectivity in journalism.
Yes.
Because we're just human beings. We can be biased in a lot of things. I may hate the president. I may hate everyone else that people are covering, but the more important thing is that we don't let these biases reflect in our reporting. Do you think this should be one of the lessons non-journalists can learn from journalists?
Yeah.
To be objective, because the thing about social media now is that, well, social media primarily is spurred by emotions. People are very emotional on social media. Whatever you think, you can just post it there. You can shout your heart out there. But the thing is, for journalists in particular, we tend to be more reserved in posting and sharing our opinion because it might be mistaken as something that can be influenced, that can influence our reporting.
But then this time, because of the trolls, because of fake news, media people are very, very vocal in terms of fighting them and so ever. But then I realized this is not the perfect time for us somehow to really argue with the trolls. I just realized it lately. Because all the more that you argue with them...
Have you had experience?
Of course. Because the last election was my first election that I can actually openly campaign for anyone. Because that's the first time that I was out of ABS-CBN or the media world.
Alright.
So when I had my stand on social media and people knew about my stand, like they were really arguing. I tell you, there's so many trolls, and one of the most notable trolls was when she told me, like, Rico, adika.
Hashtag
Maybe
hater.
she was not aware that you were no longer with the mainstream
Yes,
media.
yes. And then I realized that this time, because there are so many fake news, and para na ako, I have so many friends in social media, and I would always read their posts whatsoever. My always, simple lang comment. I won't argue whatsoever. Comment that you could, fake news. Fake news. Maragib na. So it's up to them. Argue ba sila na whatsoever, but then I tell you, the source that you're getting or sharing is actually fake. Now, how can you be a responsible social media user if you are actually sharing fake news? Now, if you're saying that the mainstream media are the ones that are fake, for just for santo, my goodness, we've been in the industry for so many years. Now, kung saan ito mga panahon nga nagsalig mo na mo o kami among, di ba? We were the source of information, fake na good from the very start. So, that's one. Second, this is not the perfect time to argue with trolls, but this is the perfect time for mainstream media to really cover and document everything. Because we'd always go back to this time in history that we would realize that there is such portion in the Philippine history that there are so many trolls than the mainstream media.
When we were challenged.
Yes, exactly. Because if there's one thing that we lacked during the Marcos time, it's the documentation. That's the reason why there are so many young generation that they are not convinced that there is some atrocities being done during the Marcos time because we don't have enough video to show to them. But we have statements and stories from people who were actually survivors of all of these atrocities. But the point is,
We're talking about the martial law.
yes, the martial law days. This one, the troll times whatsoever, the best way is for us to cover, just simply cover. And let the people in the next 2, 5 years, 10 years realize that during this time, in 2015 onwards whatsoever, we have this kind of people in the Philippines who are fake. Sorry to say that.
Good points.
It's really fake news, no? Well, I recently talked to a couple of students sa south of Cebu when they were asking, how do we actually spot fake news?
Yes, yes. Go
That's a good
well,
point, yeah.
Right? Well, for us mass comm graduates, it's very easy. It's like drinking coffee in the morning. It's so easy, but we actually don't realize that it's difficult for the others.
For the others.
For those who did not study journalism.
It's actually very difficult for them. So I just said, well, number one, have your trusted news sites. It's very important to have trusted news sites. These people are actually accountable to libel and legal stuff when they publish fake news. Unlike your neighbor who's just posting some hearsay from someone else, right? That's very important to have trusted news sites. It's very important to check all of your sources. If it's legit information, you just Google it once. This is actually also the pro on the internet. You just Google it once, and if it's real news, it will be all over the news.
Pro and a con, because it's easy to search, but then of course the internet, because it's so easy to do things there, daghan nagkatakulan if you will search.
Yeah.
We don't even bother to vet and confirm.
No, if you're really a responsible social media user, simple. If you're doubtful of this particular news item, then share. Ask other people, is this really true? Before you post it in your own Facebook account. Because remember, no matter who you are in the society, whether you are a teacher, you're an engineer, a doctor, or a simple housewife, you have followers with you. And these are people who actually believe in you.
And that's something we don't realize.
Exactly. So once you're a social media user, always think it's social, it's public. So once it's there, your set of friends, group of friends, would actually read that, and it might be something that they will think about you in general. So in other words, if you share fake news, then it speaks highly of you as a person.
A devil's advocate, it might be, don't you think it might be unfair to say that these people do not really employ the right procedures in vetting information, because in the first place they did not study what we've studied, so they might not have the means of doing what we're doing.
Because actually, one thing, Jobber, that I observe, people are not just sharing the fake news; they are commenting on it.
Okay.
When you share, somehow you can. I do that. What I do is I send private messages. Excuse me, I'd like to inform you that the information that you shared is actually fake. I do that.
That several times.
Yeah, I do that. But there are those people who would share fake news and even comment about it. And that would somehow define their political color. So if that is the case, my goodness, what should I bother?
Okay.
Diba? You belong to the trolls already. You belong to the fake people already.
Okay.
So, sayang.
I think I don't know if you agree with me, but I think one of the things that the public does not understand, and one of the reasons why we're doing this is for the public to understand our job, is that when we write stories, the stories that we write or publish, at the end of the day, do not necessarily reflect our own biases. These are statements from sources.
Yes.
These are
Attributions.
attributions, things that we've seen in the field that we are writing about. So maybe because the public does not know the difference, they feel that because you are the one writing it, that's also what you believe in.
Yeah.
So that's why they attack the writer.
Could be, and it takes a lot of education somehow.
Yes.
And hopefully this time we are penetrating them in such a way. And if you know already of the concept from news gathering to news writing to news reporting, try to explain it to people that it's not easy actually to come up with a specific news item in comparison to your fake news that you're posting in your wall.
Precious raised an important point earlier. How do you spot fake news? How do you identify it? What tips can you give the public? You're an experienced journalist. Both of you have studied mass comm in college. You've taught mass comm. For those who did not study mass comm, how can they spot incorrect information?
Number one,
from the sources.
Sourcing. Number one for me, sourcing really. If it doesn't come from a legitimate and institution, media institution or mainstream media, then number one, you should be doubtful already if this one is true or not. Number two, once you open the news, the headline, the title is really striking and very attractive. But when you open it, it does not give you enough or substantial information regarding the claim based on that particular title. So that's already fake news. Number three is attribution, no specific people. And number four, just like what Mom said a while ago, simply Google and try to compare. If that's not being exposed or not being, if there's no such story being gathered in that specific mainstream media, then it might be or it could be a fake news.
Mm-hmm. When we talk about credibility of source of information, what does that mean exactly?
You're talking with specific people, institutions,
Okay.
government institutions, private institutions. If in case this particular person is claiming this, or the story is claiming this, there might be someone who's really credible in the government or in whatever institution that is saying that particular statement.
In other words, that person from whom the information came must have the capacity to say or to share that information. So in other words, if the story is about engineering, definitely a doctor cannot be a credible source of engineering topics.
Like you cannot ask people when would the electricity would be restored.
Correct. Just as if you want to talk about topics regarding weather, should be talked about by people who are experts in the profession.
Or if in case it's all about corruption in the government, so it must be from people who are really into it or something. Like people studying about corruption in the Philippines. You can just simply let someone talk about it and he is already your reliable source whatsoever.
What are your experiences? Rico has shared his experience with trolls and whatnot on internet. What about you, Precious? Have you experienced anything like that?
Well, there was this one controversial article I shared about a certain event in one school. People started attacking me without really thinking what I was talking about. It was just way beyond the line. I was talking about entirely something else, and they would attack about entirely something else. So I just dismissed the idea and thought that these are people that don't really think, because critical thinking really requires practice. This is not something that you acquire overnight. This is something that you learn. We learn it from school.
You develop.
And you develop this. So it's really a matter of really choosing your battles, if this is something that is worth it. What I learned is that people are actually more open if you tell them nicely, without really seeming like you're attacking them.
So don't be antagonistic.
Yes. And what I always think is that these people are really nice people in real life. It's just that they feel really strongly about a certain topic.
Because social media has given us certain power.
Right? And you started hating on people. And then I started remembering na, wow, I really liked this person before. And now that we're just in different colors, we now start attacking each other. So what I usually do is just think that this person may think that what he or she knows is right. So might as well just also explain my side. But always raise the white flag. We're not here to argue. I'm just here to tell you my side. I can also hear about your side, but we don't need to fight. Right? But yeah, when it comes to fake news, I always just call out. But still very nicely. Because for some reason, they really responded really well if you say it in a really nice way, in a really private manner. I think you're sharing the wrong message. This is the right one. Now, if that person doesn't respond positively, I think it's time for you to remove that person from your friend list.
Okay. Why do you think it's very difficult for people online to go the extra mile? For example, a very funny, what I find very funny, for example, was when teachers of Silliman University went to the streets, they went on strike in Dumaguete City.
Last month.
Yes, last month. And an article came out on GMA News on Facebook. That article was shared several times. And if you read the comments, people were attacking the teachers on strike because they thought that the teachers went on strike against the President Duterte. The comments had nothing to do with the article because what they saw in the picture was that teachers were on strike, and probably they thought that the teachers were replicating or emulating what they saw in Manila, because at that point also teachers there were protesting against the President and EJK.
Okay.
So in other words, those who commented in the article apparently did not read the article. They didn't bother checking it and reading it actually. Why do you think it's that difficult for people to go the extra mile?
Because most often, if not every often actually, people would simply react by the mere reading of the headline. And for me, because somehow this is, sorry to say this, but then it's a different culture that is being born in the Philippines today in terms of media use, social media users. When they will see anything pertaining to or in defiance whatsoever with the president, that is something already that is against the president. So in general, ikaw na mo'y kontrabida somehow.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of telling them and informing them that that's not actually the case. Because in the past administration, there are a lot of people who are critical, and that how come there are less people who would argue with these critical people? I mean, there were critical debates in the past, but then how come
people
today?
talked about issues, in other words.
Yes, but this time it's really more personal. That if you would say something against the president, you're actually saying something bad against me.
But in this case, the example I gave, the president had nothing. He was never in the picture. So why do you think people just jump into conclusions?
Perhaps because they don't have enough time to read, and for them that once you say it, it's totally it. Mona na siya. Wala kailangan pang I don't need to research some more about that particular article because it's being given to me already. For them, that first impression of just reading it is already the entirety of the story, which is quite painful because literally that's what's happening now. They will judge you by that certain comment lang nimo. Ikaw, di ba? We are very responsible in a sense. We're telling them that you have to be responsible, etc.
Yeah.
But if you do that, you must be against their president already. So that's the painful reality.
Precious.
We've all become so lazy.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know.
Is it the culture? Is it the culture of being very quick, the very first to post?
Actually, because of everything that's being thrown our way online, it's so difficult to digest everything. So what you do is just get bite size of everything else.
So scroll.
Give a reaction and move on. And then when people call you out, actually we're not talking about your president, we're talking about this and this and this. But because it gets lost in all the notifications that you get from all of the comments that you're giving, you just don't have time to go back to it and verify the information. And at the back of your head, when you go to sleep at night, the information that you got, everyone from Dumaguete is rallying about the president. And you don't have time to go back there, read it, and see that it's actually not about the government, but about
something
teachers, something else, right?
Yeah.
We've all become so lazy. We want everything to be bite-sized. It has to be Twitter 140 characters limit. So, and it's very different. Culture, it's a whole new culture. And, well, not to insert Southwestern, but what they actually do in active learning is that kids will now have to write all the time. They're not allowed to take photos of lectures. And I'm very guilty when I was in college. Around the last few years in college where smartphones with cameras are very affordable. All of us would just take a photo and study. Or record the whole discussion. Especially in mass comm where we had recorders. We just record our teacher and even not listen to the teacher, just listen to the recorder later on. Longhand writing still develops retention for the students. It teaches a different kind of discipline altogether. I know the kids are complaining that it's really very difficult.
Yeah, because the argument there is that why do you have to make it difficult for us if you can do it the easy way?
Right? But you don't have a choice. Really better. And we explain this to the parents and to the kids when we start the school year. Really better retention, more time for your brain to process the information properly when you write it longhand. And at the end of the school year, and you will have to keep all of these because at the end of the school year, your teachers will check. And if you don't have one, you will not be able to move on to the next level. So that's a whole new kind of discipline that we're teaching our kids. That's I think that's also very important for schools to add that in their curriculum. Because really, you cannot replace the kind of education,
the discipline that comes along with it.
Yes.
Good point, because I think that's one of the things that we learn in journalism that we can actually share with the public, because the public thing, because we have recorders all the time with us, we seem to record everything, but we are actually taught in the newsrooms that we listen to our sources when they speak and understand what they're talking about, and simply what we've recorded would simply act as a backup. If we want direct quotes, for example, in our stories. Your experience in the field, did you rely on recorders?
No, I usually ask relevant questions directly to the source. I don't usually ask from A to Z, like, what is your name, ma'am? How old are you? I don't usually do that. I go directly to the quote that is more important to me. And then the rest, I can turn off the camera and then, or record the conversation without the audio, only the natural sound. And then the rest is just a story somehow. Because sa TV mo is quite different. In television, you're only required to come up with a 2-minute news item for a very, very big story. So
how do you do that? Please explain to the public. How do you put everything together substantially? Because that's actually what people we don't know how to do that.
Yes.
And that's something that broadcast journalists are quite well trained to do.
Okay. Example. Let's go to the incident or tragedy in Talisay a few years back when 2 ships collided. The other one sank. It's a big story.
Correct.
With that kind of the hugeness of the story, where will you start? Always think and always go to the basic. What is my case study? Because the case study will simply tell you the entirety of the story. So, if my case study is a mother with a child na gibit-bit nga napuno na sila may salana, and like they survived because the Coast Guard actually saved them. If you would start from there, and then it's actually micro to macro, because people would always appreciate the story. If you go back to the micro, always look for the micro of the story before you put the macro of the story. Because a macro of a story is so hard to digest, while a micro is so easy for us to understand. Example, if it's a big fire, like 20 buildings na sunog whatsoever, I cannot simply absorb everything. But if you tell me a case study of a fireman, for example, fighting for this fire to be out. So literally, you get into the story already through this fireman's eyes or emotions. So it's micro to macro. It's always like that.
And in 2 minutes, how do you fuse that together?
In 2 minutes, for example, come up with a story of a mother and a child, and like for example in Tagalog or English.
Either.
Kabaw na inisigon.
Yeah. What did you teach Ma'am Grace in broadcast journalism?
So, like for example, if mag-micro ko that story, so Aligilena, for example, hindi mapigilan ang pag-iyak ni Aligilena, bitbit ang kanyang 6 na buwang sanggol. Balot sila ng langis matapos sa aksidente na nangyari kagabi. Then Manangilina would say, nagbangga ang barko, nalunod, nagbangga ako sa barko, nalunod, may ganito may sa tikas na barko na save rami. Isa lang si Aligilena sa may 100 na naligtas ng Coast Guard matapos magbanggaan sa tama sa Aquinas at ang barko ng Salvation Lads. So you can easily go with the story already because of that case study. So your case study is your anchor. You put the anchor, it's in there already, and explore the story. And then just at about 2 minutes, people will understand. And the power of SOPs or sound and tapes would tell you how emphatic it is and how painful the story is because of the sound and tapes. And then, of course, the natural sound is really, really important, like people shouting, Coast Guard, yes, and then all the videos, raw videos, actually so important. So you need to look for the best videos that would represent the entirety of the story.
What do you think? What do you think the young people can learn from our generation, the millennial generation? Technically, I think we're still part of the millennial generation, but at the tail end of it, beginning. What can they learn from us as far as our experiences with technology and the use of media is concerned?
That somehow we still
realizations.
Yeah, that somehow we still value personal contact, despite the presence of social media. Because in the new generation, the Generation X and the Generation Z and Y rather, they're really into social media. But they're so intelligent, even more intelligent than us.
Really?
Yeah, and their speed is so fast compared to us in terms of information absorption. So the only difference is that kita manggod, we always value gihapon personal contact to people. Like we are not contented with just chatting. After the chat, we call up. Have you noticed that? Like because we would always value emotion. We would always value expression and reaction of a person, not just emoticons whatsoever.
Right. And speaking of which, that can also be because the things that we post can also be very misleading because it can be very subjective depending on who is reading it and appreciating it.
Yes.
Because for example, even if I write all caps, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm angry. Right?
Yeah.
So unlike if, for example, you call, you actually know how the person is saying it. So you will not be misled or you cannot misinterpret it.
Yeah. So but then this generation, actually the new generation now, in a way they're so hard-headed, man and good, compared sa tuwa. Because somehow, we still belong to that point where parents would still dictate us what to do, and we still follow. And then the later part of our adolescence, that's where technology came in. But this time, there's really exposed at the age of 4 or 5, they have gadgets already in their hands. So it's quite different in terms of what would they learn from us somehow.
Precious, you're younger. Younger than us for a few years.
It's a great time for communication. Ads are actually labeled as ads. You would see sponsored posts everywhere. And this is the generation where they actually identify what is a paid ad.
Yeah.
Or that, this ad is made for me to buy clothes or to give more importance to something else over something. So this is actually a generation that's very, very critical. It's just that our emotions get the better of us. When we feel like that information is moving towards what we believe in it.
Or question what we believe in.
But if it's the opposite, we like criticize it right away. So this is actually a great generation. Information is there for everyone.
Fake news, trolls, do you think they are simply part of a trend, or do you think...
I really hope and pray that it's just a trend. Because I always believe that at the end of the day, when the truth would prevail, the trolls and the fake news would eradicate
Die natural death.
and die natural death.
Okay.
Because even in the past, Robert, we there's nothing. What I mean is, nothing bad's gonna happen to you when you are following the truth or the right path. Mm-hmm. So I'm just hoping somehow. I just would like to pick something from what you said a while ago, that most likely these people are just misinformed, so they don't know exactly in terms of sourcing, getting the right source, getting the right the right news whatsoever. I just simply hope it's like that. But then there are a lot of people who are really just trolls, simply just trolls, and
they have that much time in their hands. We hope it ends there.
Yeah, and the best way to counter is simply tell the truth. It's the only thing. That's the only thing. And I just would like to reemphasize what I said a while ago. Document all of these things that somehow in our history, in
20 years from now, we look back to this day and say, we faced this challenge and we overcame this challenge.
Not just from the media's point of view, but a society, as a nation as a whole. That there was a time in our country where trolls are so powerful and deceiving in a sense. Fake news are really deceiving.
For sure. On the aspect of education,
I think we're becoming more responsible. The media is taking it into their hands to inform the public. There are countless campaigns online and offline on responsible social media use, how to be more proactive, how to be a better person. And it reaches more and more people because of social media. So I believe that a few years from now, we'd all be better people. But I think there would always be, as I call them, haters.
okay.
People who would think otherwise. But hopefully very, very few a few years from now as we become a more educated bunch. So hopefully in the future. And with social media, campaigns to be more responsible are getting farther and farther, and more people are being reached by information.
How do you think journalists or the media in general can continue to be relevant in this information age?
As long as there's this communication and the need for information, we would be very, very relevant still. This is not a dying industry, because as long as we give focus on the value of information, gathering facts, getting the right news, I believe we're still very much relevant. And somehow along the way, even those people who believe in fake news and in trolls whatsoever, they will still go back to getting the right information from the right source, and that is the mainstream media.
Precious, your thoughts?
Well, as a testament, we're currently working on a communication program at Southwestern University. So if this is a dying industry, I don't think...
Why bother?
Right. But we see the need. There will always be a need for communication, for information dissemination. So there will always be a place for media. Whether it will be in traditional or through online or live shows like this one, through Twitter, then there will always be a need for media.
Good point, because the conversation has always been that print or TV or radio will disappear and then online will take over fully. But I think that conversation is very parochial, because we're only talking about the platform, right? So it should be a conversation of the relevance of journalism, no matter the platform. Do you agree?
Yeah. Because as long as we still uphold democracy, or we still are enjoying our democratic form of government, media will still be there, being the fourth state. And we should be happy about it. I mean, we fought for it, our forefathers fought for it. And it is something that we need to celebrate. Celebrate, and not just celebrate, use it. And try to grab this particular moment in time in which we are very much fortunate compared to other neighboring countries in the world. We're still very much focused onto the media that is being run by their own government. And the check and balance still there in the Philippines because of the presence of the mainstream media.
How do you think, from your perspective, how do you think journalists today can manage being in the profession and the relationship with government today? You've seen how government has been very critical of media and how media is covering stories and writing about stories about government. How do you think this relationship will play out in the next few years?
Write the stories, cover the stories as you did years back. Nothing is changed. Nothing should change. Because media people shouldn't bend in any government, in any president, for example, in any administration, for example. We should cover news items the way we covered it during the time of Ramos, of Pinoy, of Arroyo, of Marcos even. And that's it. Every single day, that should be your staple. That should be your mantra. That there is no such thing as trolls bothering you, fake news bothering you, or even government officials telling you what to do and what to cover and what slant or what angle to actually write or broadcast. Just simply do your job.
Honest to goodness journalism.
Yes.
No matter who's in the position.
Exactly. Because no matter what, Jobert, this administration would still, it will end.
Duterte said he will not be vying for another position after 2016, or rather 2020.
That will still be alive by then.
Your message to our followers, our viewers today. We've talked about our generation and the lessons we've learned from the past, but what have you learned from today's generation and the way we use media or social media in particular?
Always think and analyze before everything else. Think who posted it, what will the person get because of this information. Always analyze why this information is posted online. Is this for me? Is this something that would influence me to do something? That's very, very important. With all the information that we're getting online, we get countless information online every day. So always be a critical thinker. Always double check your sources and think that, am I acting this way because this is not in line with what I believe in? Is this the truth and stuff like that? So always just think before you react.
Rico, what is the most important thing that the public must learn from journalists or the media in how we work in society?
On a personal point of view, there are a lot of times, Jobert, that I would actually resist from posting anything about the government, about AJK, about drug campaign whatsoever, because I would always love to post good news on my wall. But then I would always realize, time pa. Before I became who I am today, more than anything else, I'm a media person.
You were a journalist.
Yeah, I'm a journalist. So there are early times that I really have to post it because somehow I feel responsible about the number of people following me and looking at my posts every single day. And hopefully, even though if you're a teacher, a simple farmer whatsoever, as long as you're in social media, a student for example, please take it upon you, that particular responsibility, that you are there, you using a social media, and your simple voice can be a big influence to so many. So that would somehow give you that calling of, being more responsible about the things that you're posting. Because this one is a very critical period as to what is the truth and what is not. Well, in fact, it's so hard for us to define already what is fake news and what is real news. Yeah. In as much as it's so hard for us, to so many people, to define what is water to what is sand. You can just imagine that. So, in as much as possible, in your own little way, be the right influence to these people that is surrounding you. And remember, people will always remember you because of who you are, not because of a certain party or of a political person that you're defending.
Where do you think we're going in the next 5 years with internet and social media?
Hi.
Where do you think this will lead us? The power that we have now with the internet and social media.
I'm really hoping that one day I would wake up and I would not find any fake news. That's one thing that I am projecting somehow in the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, we would still be very much relevant, the mainstream media, and definitely we would still be there.
Do you see you coming back?
Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm actually entertaining the fact that I'll be coming.
That should be good news for your fans and your followers. Where do you think we're going? We're heading?
We'll all be on our toes. The media, us in the education sector, what we post online, us in marketing, what we post online, because you can't just fool people now. You can't fool people. They will always double check. You can't fool them for a while, but someone will always correct you. Someone will always find the truth. Someone will have the receipts. This will be the photos, the videos, all the information. The proof if you're telling the truth or if you're not. People will complain through social media, so you can't just be lazy and not do your job or your business. So we'll all be on our toes, but hopefully that will all make us better people. Because
hopefully, fingers crossed.
Hopefully, because we'll be more aware that people are watching online and people will be posting online. So hopefully it's a better society for all of us in 5 years.
It's very nice because we're all looking at the glass half full rather than half empty.
Yes.
There you have it. Precious Herradura from Southwestern University, and of course, should I say, Rico Lucena, formerly of ABS.
I'm so old already with me.
Thank you, Rico and Precious. Thank you very much for spending time with us this afternoon.
Pleasure, yours.
Media education and media literacy in today's Freeman Conversations. I'm Joe Oka of the Freeman Online. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.